Hi everyone, I'm Sally, and I've got some fun stuff to talk to you about today. It is related to the tech industry, but in a sort of personal way. So this is my husband, Francis, with me a little while ago while he had a bit more hair. And we met at school. Our relationship started by, I went to Cambridge, but then he dropped out of school, and then he got hit by a car, and then I messaged him on Facebook. So it's just the normal way that you sort of get to know each other. Basically the point of this is that my husband has ADHD, which stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. So this is not a great name because attention deficit and hyperactivity are not the main parts of ADHD. It's actually more about self-control and motivational, not even skills, just like the part of your brain behind your forehead is called the frontal lobes, and they control the executive functions, which are all about your brain's ability to plan and to hold things in mind and to take things apart into their different parts and then see how they get put back together again into the steps towards a goal. So as you can imagine, if you've got a problem with being able to do any of that stuff, then all your long-term goals will be affected. So things like these are very, very common outcomes or problems when you have ADHD. And it can be really quite serious and in fact life-threatening in the end. So just as one thing, I'd just like you all to know a little bit more now about ADHD than you might have done before, because a lot of people trivialise it. And if you want to know more, this guy, Professor Russell Barkley, is the guy to find. And I'll send you this, I'll put the slides out on Twitter so that you can go to this link where there's a playlist of videos from him. Given all that, you can imagine that there's also a very big mental health toll when you've got ADHD. So if just every time that you promise yourself you're going to get something done, or you promise someone else that you're going to get something done, but all the time just things turn up out of the blue that you've forgotten about and are just suddenly you not manage to fulfill your obligations, then in the end you don't trust yourself and you don't bother really trying to have dreams of any kind, because you can only really live in the moment and you're a bit trapped in that way. So this was kind of the situation with Francis, and he's a really, really great person, but when we moved in together after university, we quickly found there were some pretty big issues. And it's odd when you're living with someone with ADHD, because it's almost like I caught it in a way, because there weren't many options about how to handle it, because I either could nag him all the time or try and chase around and rescue him and fix things after him, or just sort of join him in the chaos of general life. So I chose the third option as the least bad, and so we ended up with a house that looked like this. Most of the time, all over the place, mess everywhere. That was the most obvious kind of symbol of what was happening. But there was also the fact that Francis really didn't have any direction or much enthusiasm for the future. I once mentioned, wouldn't it be nice to go travelling the world together one day? And he said, oh no, that sounds horrible. That sounds like so much work. I can't even imagine being able to organise that. So I was a bit worried, like where our relationship was going to get to if this was the case. And even more than that, Francis, like many people with ADHD, had a problem with drinking. So it was every night, several beers, and often got a little bit more than that. So things just weren't that great. So obviously I tried to help him. I'm quite an organised person. I have read many self-help books. I pulled out all the stops with all the tools that I knew about. And we did things like massive tidy-ups, which would last about 2 days. So nothing that stuck long term. I think there's meant to be a GIF here, but basically, none of it was working. All we could do, yes, that's right. Yes, so all I could do in the end, after 2 or 3 years, was to take a step back, because I wasn't being able to help Francis. And instead, I could try and help myself. So I actually started coming to things like this and teaching myself to code. So eventually, after a year, I became a developer at Sky at Leeds Dock, which I'll just plug as like a great place to work. And I really enjoy that. I really recommend tech as an industry in general, not least because the very first day of my training wasn't even about coding. It was about this thing called Scrum. And you might not have heard of it, but it's the most common version of the way that companies do Agile. And you probably might have heard of Agile. So both of them, it's a way of thinking about organising things, and Scrum is a way of organising teams to deliver work, often coding. So this is a diagram which sums up most of it. You have like 2 weekly sprints where at the end of it you deliver something, and you have these particular meetings which you need to have at certain points. Like every day you have a 15-minute daily scrum where you tell each other what's going on and what you're doing today, just to keep up with the rest of the team. So when I heard about this, I was shocked that I had never heard of it before, because I was such a self-help junkie that I thought I would have known all the different systems for arranging things. But I realised that this one could be the most hopeful yet for actually being helpful to Francis. So when I got home, this is the to-do list we made on the edge of a table about putting up a board onto our wall, and this is the board. So we basically, the way it works is you just have those things. You write post-it note with a thing you need to do. It goes on like the left-hand column, and it slowly moves through the columns as you get it done until it's all the way on the right and you've finished it. That is what Scrum often looks like. And then we started adapting it, because you're also supposed to keep on refining and examining what's working for you and what isn't working for you. So we had colour-coded post-it notes for the different areas. We started adding like points to each task so that we would be able to see how well we were doing and how many points we had managed in that sprint. We decided we needed like a calendar overview as well. And then of course we went all in on the gamification. So things like the laundry hat trick, where if you have put a load of laundry on, hung up a load of laundry and put a load of laundry away all in one day, then you get a bonus plus 3 points. And things like this immediately made life seem a lot more manageable. We really got into this. We had to expand onto a second board because I wanted to put my tasks on the board as well. So I've done a lot. This is probably the most geeky thing I've ever been involved with. But we made this amazing adventure game which we use the points to move forward with, including cards and dice, and Francis loves this kind of thing, and it just made it all a lot more engaging. Turns out though, after having done it once, we kind of didn't have the energy to keep on going every day with all that setup, but it was well worth it for the time we were using it. So the results have been really quite big in our lives. For starters, we've actually been travelling. Previously we'd spent like 4 days in Whitby, was our longest holiday. Then we went for a month in Vietnam. So a bit of a step up, and something that Francis would never have contemplated before, but by breaking it down using the Scrum every day was much, much less difficult. Also, we got married, and this was, thanks. This was truly, truly revolutionary, because he was able to help with the wedding planning. I think he maybe put in like maybe 30% of the wedding work he did. And given the fact that before we had Scrum, he would not have been capable of helping with most of it, then this is really, really a huge thing. Also, he's stopped drinking. He's over a year now not been drinking. He's taking up things like archery and woodwork and all sorts of other things instead. Much happier for it. He has been volunteering for over a year with the ambulance service. This badge shows that he has saved a life using CPR. And, this is gutting, there was a photo here of him in his new uniform, because he's just this month started training as like an assistant paramedic. So he's started a job as a paramedic, which is the goal we've been working towards for 2 years, which is a huge long-term goal to have achieved. So yeah, we're both thrilled, obviously. And the way that Francis describes ADHD is like being on a raft in an ocean with no like visible direction or way to get anywhere. But with Scrum, it's like you have a compass, so you know like sort of where to go, and you have a paddle. So it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it possible to get somewhere. And I think a lot of other people have ADHD. It's like between 5 and 10% of the population. And there are all sorts of other conditions as well which affect your executive functioning. I actually have a colleague whose son has Asperger's syndrome, and they've used Scrum at home, which has massively helped with his ability to be more flexible with his daily routine and understand that change is not something to get really, really upset about. So I just see enormous potential for using Scrum in this way. I've started, for instance, Francis and I have been involved with running this YouTube channel about ADHD. We're not currently right now working on it because it's tricky with a team with lots of ADHDers, but we're going to, get back to it at some point. And that's been really fulfilling. I started teaching others how to do it, and I went round to my friend's house and got this board on her wall so that she would be able to start helping herself in that way. And I've started to put together a proposal for writing a book about it, because I think if people had a very well written and well edited book about how to do Scrum in your home, even if you've never heard of it before and you've never set foot in the tech industry, then it could spread to a lot of places. Like I can see it happening in schools, for university students, for families, as well as of course just at home in general, for any family and couple that's struggling to keep up with things. So if you know anybody who might benefit from this, I'm looking for people who can be case studies in this book. So I'm really happy to come and help you learn about Scrum and set it all up in the first place. I want to see if this works. So if anyone wants to get involved, these are some ways you can contact me. Twitter might be the easiest. And if you've heard of Slack, that's a very common messaging app used in the tech world. And this is a little link so that you can join it. And it's only about 20 to 30 people so far who are also trying it out as a way of dealing with their ADHD. So thank you very much.
Brilliant. Thanks, Sally.